Well, it means that you understand that pandemic is a God. It's a deity. It is a divine presence. But like all divine presences, it is not benign and is not there to facilitate your inner life.
In some ways, I think you're right. The presence of death or more dying in such a public fashion could prompt more, death skillfulness or death wisdom or, whatever one could bring to it. And yet there's very little evidence that seems to be happening. And so in that sense, the continuation of what's been there in the past. And I mean, you had this phrase, something like, what is it? So what's it going to take actually to change you, right? To be changed by it. And that's what I'd love to ask too is, what does it mean to be changed by it in this moment?
Well, it means that you understand that pandemic is a God. It's a deity. It is a divine presence. But like all divine presences, it is not benign and is not there to facilitate your inner life. It has its work. It has its commitment. It has its loyalties and allegiances. Okay. And these can be learned by us. But learned at the concert, at the casualty, and casualties are inevitable in learning. The learning would be the realization that we knew very little about how to be plagued, right? We knew how to submit it to our self-mastery designs. Well, that's not knowing. That's another prejudice, right? At the risk of self-aggrandizement, which Canadians are horrible at, and I am one. If you'd be so kind and indulge me for a minute, this might be worth listening to. It's a little more cogent in writing than I might be able to pull off in person. But it's the same person talking. See what you think. This is apropos, I think, of what you've just asked me. The plague has confounded the old hard-to-defend days of easy travel. There's something in all of this that has brought me back to all of those deathbeds all those years ago. I'm wondering whether I credited the dread and the terror of those dying people as I might have done and should have done then. The terror and the dread never did it come in for much scrutiny by the parties to the endeavor in those days. Sadness and despair and depression, yes, they were much more amenable to consultation, and they probably still are. But there's something about dread that beggars ordinary speech, that is communicable, yes, but only among the dreadful, the cognoscenti. Now consider the onset of an allergy. The first flower of allergy is unnerving in its foreignness and in the unfamiliar swelling and galloping reactivity. By this, I'm talking about the culture here. That, it turns out, is just a warning. Your body is disinhibited now, and it has a wartime capability, a weapons-grade alertness that you yourself never imagined. It knows something about ruthless, merciless, vigilante self-care. It knows about shoot, then talk, self-policing, and it can swell into paralysis. It can swell to asphyxia. It can swell unto death, and you along with it, in the name of protecting itself. And the first event, harsh as it is, that's only the beginning. For you and your noble conveyance have become sensitized. Now, that's the word that's used. That means that every subsequent encounter with the prompter will ratchet up the guardian spirit of your metabolics and your respiration to a fever pitch of agitated defense. It knows how to man the barricades now and how to choke off access to the command and control center of your embattled, once nimble bone house. It is on call, on demand, and an exponential first responder. Your sensitivity has become morbid now. With that, I'm suggesting that there's something about the ubiquity of this communicative device that we are speaking across now, that is an enabler of that kind of hypersensitized, highly reactive, utterly ungoverned, deeply irresponsible capacity to simply kick out the jams, and to feel legitimized in doing so, because the uncertainties are so ignoble and so corrosive that the entitlement is almost inevitably ensuing from the encounter. It's, if anybody feels terrified, not at the consequence of my tirade here, but simply by looking out the window, I would say your sense of terror is utterly legitimate. It is utterly legitimate. This time is a kind of uncharted time. And forget that nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. It's always been a given. But think about this. The notion, you see in the advertising now, do you not? Welcome back, they say. Things are opening up, and all of this kind of thing. To what? Well, what are they welcoming back? I have an answer for you. It's a number. 2019. I would never have guessed that the consequence of 20 months of relative isolation has been to lionize and to mythologize the, quote, personal freedoms that were available to us in 2019, as if that year is the high watermark of cultural achievedness. And as soon as we get back to that, man, all will be well, and we can finally get rid of Trudeau or whatever the solution is supposed to be.
Absolutely.